at that time, it was, I was 33, 34, and I was really starting to think there had to be more to life. But it brought me up to 1972, where Gerald called me up and said he was back in town, as I alluded to earlier, and you got to get together with this guy, Franklin Jones. I think you'll get along. And I recall saying, Franklin Jones, there's nobody called Franklin Jones. As it turned out to be prophetic. I was really very depressed at this time, and almost suicidal, and but totally functioning. The thing about it was, in order to function, I had to be stoned, and in one form or another all day, for about 9-10 years. There wasn't a moment I was sober, either through alcohol or marijuana, or sometimes another occasional drug, to relieve the anxiety and pain in my body, But nobody would have noticed that, because I was totally functional,
Sure.
And raising my kids, and who I had a lot of fun with, and so forth. But I knew there was more to life. There had to be. So when Gerald called me, he said, "Why don't you come down?" And I did on a Friday night. And the book, The Knee of Listening, was at this printer's in Georgia at the time. And he gave me a manuscript to Gerald to read, to take home. And I was just about to leave, and I did something to this day, I don't know whatever possessed me, because I never did it before. He showed me the hall, and I asked him if I could sleep in there, Now, I didn't consciously say that, And he said, yeah, because another guy was going to sleep in there, Wes Vaught. So he gave me a sleeping bag, and outside of service, I think it was the only other time I used a sleeping bag. But I needed to, because when he showed me the hall, something must have resonated in my body, because I remember waking up in the morning completely refreshed. It was one of the big turning points, because I took home The Knee of Listening and devoured it, and it blew my mind, literally blew my mind, because he was the first and only time somebody had shown me what reality was, tacitly and physically from the book itself, And in all fairness to myself, nobody told me what to do, So we walk into the hall, everybody sits down, I lean against the wall with my horn-rimmed glasses on, and the manuscript, The Knee of Listening, and I'm reading it, And then Beloved walks in, takes his seat, looks around, Now I'm leaning against the wall with this book. I mean, nothing disrespectful. I just didn't know any better,
Sure.
And I'm reading the manuscript, and every once in a while I'd be looking at him, up at him, and he'd be looking at every individual. And at one point in time, he looks at me, and straight in the eye, and I got the message. I took off my glasses, put the book down, the manuscript down, and sat in a semi-lotus position for about a half an hour, and then it was over. And he gets up, and he walks behind the curtain into his, there was a little office in back, and everybody walks out the front door. I don't know what possessed me. I walked straight out through the to the back, to his curtains, and he's sitting in there, obviously in bhava, and he looks up at me and he says, "What's happening?" And it blew my mind, because that is a phrase I have used since childhood to this day when I say, "What's happening to people?" And what came out of me was so startling that when I said it, I didn't realize it. I said, "I don't know, man. I can't relate to anything or anybody anymore." And that's the shape I was in. And he reached up and he grabbed me, and he hugged me for a really long time. And from that moment on, I have never, ever felt that way again. He just removed it. You know? I like to tell that Leela often, because that one hug did it. You know? And he said, "What do you do?" You know, I said, "Well, I own a business," and you know, I introduced myself, you know, as Neil Panico. And he said, "Well, why don't you start coming around a bit?" You know, and I said, "I will." You know, I started going down to the ashram and start sitting with him, you know, which I believe were Tuesdays nights and Saturday mornings, you know, and on Saturday mornings, to show you how raw we were and how he was starting to work with us, we would finish sitting with him on Saturday morning and go next door to the coffee shop and have bacon and eggs and coffee, you know, and I believe an occasional cigarette. And he gradually weaned us of that, you know. It's remarkable what I'm seeing now in retrospect with him passing, because I'm writing him a letter now, which, you know, expresses some of what I'm going to tell you. But in the early first few months or so, you know, you knew he was a teacher, you know, and you knew he was something unique. And I was the first one to call him guru, you know, because Franklin just didn't seem right, you know. And over the years, I've known how he sacrifices he made, you know, and how he suffered us, you know. But he, you know, he did it, you know, in human terms, you know. He weaned us in a certain way, and over a long period of time, you know. He really indulged us. I know he indulged me, you know.